to welcome everyone to the satsang tonight. And as you may have heard previously, these satsangs in honor of one of the greatest saints to walk the earth. And not only that he was a saint, but there are many saints. But one who lives in a way that his mere lifestyle inspires others to be a saint. We talk about none other than Pujya Swami, Pujya Gurudev, Swami Chinmayananda Ji. And his devotees, out of great love, would have composed 108 names. And each night we are saying one of those names, and we are now on the 59th night and also the 59th name of Pujya Gurudev. We will chant from Nirvikalpaya Namaha until that name. Om Nirvikalpaya Namaha.
Om Nirvikalpaya Namaha.
Nityaya Namaha.
Om Nityaya Namaha.
Om Niranjanaya Namaha.
Om Niranjanaya Namaha.
Om Paramaya Namaha.
Om Paramaya Namaha.
Om Parabrahmane Namaha.
Parabrahmane Namaha.
Om Parabrahmane Namaha.
Om Parabrahmane Namaha.
Parabrahma means the highest reality. And in Parabrahmane Namaha means one who is the ultimate reality. And this name is not linked with any particular characteristic trait of Pujya Gurudev. Some of his names describe some quality, like the one who uplifts Dharma, the one who is compassionate by nature. But this indicates the jnani at his highest level, one who recognizes that he himself is Parabrahma. He himself is the highest reality. And there's a very popular statement in Vedanta, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. One who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. So, because of Pujya Gurudev knew Brahman, and he operated from that understanding of his identity with Brahman, we recognize him as none other than Brahman itself. And the interesting thing about these names is that we are not talking about something that, okay, so this is Pujya Gurudev. This is an entity called Swami Chinmayananda, and he recognized his identity with the truth. And then, because of that identification, we worship him as Parabrahma. We worship him as well. But in that name is a very nice indicator to devotee as well, that you also are the Parabrahma. Though he may seem to have functioned through name and form. So in name, Swami Chinmayananda. And he lived in Siddhavadi, or he lived in Uttarakanshi, or he stayed in Gangotri, wherever he stayed. But at no point in time, after realizing or recognizing the truth, did he identify with the other things in the reality. His identity was only with the truth. And in our evolution as well, sometime must come. It may be this life, next life, 1,000 lives, 100,000 lives. But we will in our own evolution, have to identify with reality. What we identify with now, we identify with, well, those who went for the walk, still a little bit identifying with the foot that hurting them, still identifying with name and form. But here it is saying that there is some level of reality. See, he identified with the highest reality. You know, we sometimes identify with a country, or when I was coming in this evening, somebody tell me, you know, they grew up in this place, so they identify with Muruga. Or I, being a brahmachari, might identify with that role of being a brahmachari. But even all these little identifications will one day have to drop. And that's why I tell you, sit down in meditation and drop. Most times you drop the meditation. You know, and I remember just yesterday or the day before I went to a prayers, and I was saying that this disciple, his guru told him to drop some personality trait, something negative he was doing. And I was telling the other person, and they were saying that most people will drop the guru. When it becomes difficult in spirituality, when our search for the real challenges ourselves to drop things that we are accustomed with, that we feel homely with, it really takes a lot for you to say, what I'm seeing in front of me isn't real. And it may be something beyond us. And that's why it's very, very important for us to do vichar. To constantly think, this situation in front of me, or this identification with the body, or even the identification with the mind. The body changes. You know, I need to start Gita. But, let me go on. If I identify with this body that I had before, I have been doing this work full-time for around 8 years, right? And if every cell in the body changes every 8 years, and I have been eating everybody else's food for the last 8 years, then logically my body is not my body. Somewhere I go, I get baigan, somewhere I go aloo, like whatever they give me tonight. So my body actually belongs to the world. And then your mind also changes as well. Your mind changes so often. So if it is you're not the body, if you're not the mind, sometimes you may not support a particular cause today. And then 5 years from now, you may feel so passionately about that cause. So the body changes, the mind changes, the intellect changes. What is that one thing that doesn't change? All your relationship changes. Yesterday, your son who you walked with and he took care of you for however long doesn't want to see you anymore. You are in a relationship and that person is the second best thing to God. And then tomorrow, well, Jairam, love at first sight. I can't remember the next line. Divorce at the second. So if there's always things that are changing, is there anything behind the universe that doesn't change? And if man has been able to go to the moon, why not do a subjective inquiry? I speak with plenty of people. Just yesterday I was with somebody who changed a laptop. They changed a laptop, they changed a phone, they changed the speakers. Just to get better sound from the world. Suppose we change our vision to an extent where we don't need any of the changing things in the world. Where it comes, and where it is not there, it's not there. So you have no dependence at all, nothing, you don't depend on anything. That's where this Mahatma functioned from. Parabrahman. Ninamaha. So that's why he functioned from the supreme reality. So whichever country in the world he went to, he dialed up automatically. There was always that connection. There was broadband connection wherever he was. We need to also connect. And that's why you're in satsang for. To connect. And even if you get tired listening to the brahmachari's voice, right? You listen to where that voice is coming from. And you connect to that as well. So today we are seeing chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita. It is called as Vibhuti yoga. We will chant the first verse. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
You are my only refuge. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Bhuya eva mahabaho shunu me paramam vachaha.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Yaddeham priyamanaya vakshyami hitakamyaya.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Sharanam Mama. Sharanam Mama. Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Bihari Lal Ki Jai. So we have been looking at the Bhagavad Gita from its very start. And it says that the first 6 chapters deals with the jiva, the individual soul. So, individual embodied soul, and then certain spiritual activities known as upasanas have been given from chapter 1 to chapter 6. So you find somewhere that in chapter 3, karma yoga would have been given. In chapter 4, different types of yajna would have been given. In chapter 5 as well, different forms of upasana. Chapter 6, meditation would have been given. So it's all in culturing that jiva through samskaras to rise above his present vision of himself to higher vision. And the wrong associations of the jiva have been indicated by Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa, one who meditates on and gets attached to things in the world, then he falls. And then the other 6, we see where there's a focus on Tat, which is the Tat Padam, that Ishvara aspect of the universe. And the topics that are being covered in this particular chapter, Sri Adi Shankaracharya in his commentary, he says it has already been covered. He says, whatever I'm going to say here, he says, Saptame Adhyaye Bhagavan Tatvataha Vibhutayaha Cha Prakasheta Navame Cha. He says in chapter 9, I've already said. Why? Whatever is coming here, I've already said. He says, Ata idanim yeshu yeshu bhaveshu chintayato bhagavata te te bhava vaktavya. He says, all the nature of the Lord and his manifestations had already been described. He says that one of the reasons that I'm saying it again is durvignyatvat. He says the Lord, to understand the nature of the Lord is difficult. It's not something that is easily understood. And sometimes I feel we make spirituality into a very cheap thing. In terms of, remember, this is the Lord who manifests the entire universe. When we look at other sciences, how long does it take to become a doctor? No doctors here today. We could guess 5 years. 5 years? How long does it take to become a scientist? Any scientists here? I'm going to ask the question, how long it takes to become a cook? But I feel that one, there's no definite answer. Somebody says a lifetime. And when we think about spirituality, I feel as if we have the impression that you can do a crash course in spirituality and then come out and, I know God. See, in the Ramayana, it is stated that even if you take all the oceans, and you take the oceans as the ink, and you take all the trees, and you write about God's glory, you can never understand it. It's easier to understand Brahman. No name, no form. But once you go into trying to describe the Lord's glory, I tell you, our Puja Gurudev's glory as well you can't describe. A being that came, an avatar as well, Sri Ram, Sri Krishna, you can't describe. Much less for that being that causes the world to operate the way that it operates. And here, Bhuya Eva, he says again, Mahabahu. He says, oh, mighty one, oh, strong-armed one. And when I think about this one phrase, it brings to mind what we call strength in society. We feel that lifting some dumbbells and being able to run a certain amount of kilometers is strength. But here, though Arjuna had this type of strength, if you look at the beginning of the Gita itself, physical strength he had. But he didn't have emotional strength. He went in the battlefield and he was crying. And sometimes we find that in our own personality as well, we may have one type of strength. So, you give me 100 pounds of flour to lift up, and I can lift it up. You give me 25, I will manage with that. But here we find an individual who has so much physical strength, and at sometimes he showed mental strength, but when it came to intellectual strength, because he was crying on the battlefield. And how many times we cry through life as well. And I remember when we were graduating from our course in Mumbai, our Acharya had one thing to tell us. He says, know the day that you cry in the field, that you didn't understand Vedanta. You didn't understand the scriptures. So think, he says, so Arjuna is speaking, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. And he's saying, don't forget how mighty you are. And that's why several times he would call him a Bharata, or descendant of Bharat. And that's very important for us because as we culture our children and we teach them physical education, what about strengthening their minds? What about strengthening their intellects? And here he says, Shrunu me paramam vachaha. And the word shrinu is very important as well. Because sometimes you may sit in a conversation with someone. So a husband and wife is talking. And she says, you do not listen to what I'm saying. I've seen some laugh in front here. Or in relationships as well. And here the Lord is saying, Arjuna, please listen. Because many times when we interact with others, we don't give the fullness of our attention. We are there. But we never really give ourselves to, as you would say in English, heart and soul to whatever is happening in front of us. And that's why so many times in today's corporate world, you find managers and CEOs being taught the art of communication. And here Sri Krishna is telling to Arjuna to listen. And that's why when somebody comes to a satsang, especially one that follows the path of jnana, follows part of vichar, you are supposed to be so alert. Sleeping away in yourself. And he says, Me paramam vachaha. The word paramam vachaha, he said, here are my supreme words. So, supreme in the sense that, who is speaking? Bhagavan is speaking. The Lord is speaking to you. Whenever you pick up the Bhagavad Gita, always remember that the Lord is speaking. And sometimes the word itself is supreme. The word is supreme because of the fact that this is the same word, that one word may lead you to recognition, recognizing your Trinity, that you already are. So the speaker is supreme, the word is supreme, and the goal is supreme. The goal is, having understood these words, sa shanti madi gacchati. One goes to a state of supreme peace. So one thing about that is, if we are not peaceful, know that we haven't understood the words of the Lord in its truest essence. Here in the word Shrinu as well, you find that the Lord is indicating Shravanam, the importance of listening. And so much Shravanam is needed. I remember reading a story where the disciple goes to the Guru, and the disciple is asking the Guru, how long should I listen to this knowledge? I've been in this path for so long. And is there a time like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And he says, as soon as you realize that you are not the listener, then you can stop listening. When you realize, when you have no identity with your individuality in Advaita Vedanta. So when it is that you can give up all identifications, know that you have recognized the truth. And there are many times there are obstacles in listening. For instance, sometimes I may listen thinking that I know everything. That's like sometimes when you think about parents and children, it's very rare that you have parents that are very open, that will listen to exactly what the child, or even adults as myself, consider myself to be adult, that will listen to a child and hear if there's truth coming out of that child's statements. And because we like to hold on to our view, whether the view is right or wrong, we love our own opinion. We love it so much that we will never be willing to give up that opinion, even though we have been given information in front of us to prove differently. So, the scriptures is saying that you are not the body. But because I have the opinion that I am the body, I hold on to that so firmly. It says as well, it says, these are very nice, there's several things to be said about Shrinu and listening. Sometimes we are fearful of listening because if we really listen, we may need to change our lives. We may need to actually, and I'll tell you something in reference to that, and it's very obvious though. I would have gone to probably about 3 or 4 doctors, right? And they would have told me that I need to stop eating in the night. I need to only eat in the daytime. You know, I shouldn't be eating any oily food. But I don't listen. I go in there and I close my ears. My ears is open, right? I listening to what they're saying, but I'm hearing what they're saying, but I'm not really listening. And we do that as well. Even though it is said in the Shastras to get angry is not good. To become attached is not good. You need to go to satsang every day. Or if you're not going to satsang, being in satsang every day. But what if being in satsang makes me need to change my lifestyle? Then leave it. Because change is a very difficult thing. And that's why our Puja Gurudev says, hasten, slowly, go along, slowly. But know what is the goal. He says, Yatteham Priyamanaya. I'm telling you this because I love you. Arjuna, I tell you, that man's so lucky. Imagine Lord of the entire universe is saying, I love you. We sing, Prabhu ji mere aao, Prabhu ji mere aao, Prabhu ji mere aao. Come Bhagwan, and we sing, Bajle Govind, Bajle Govind, Bajle Govindam. What's the next line? Ye duniya hai, Prabhu ki maya, Bajle Govindam. This world is your maya. We sing it. This world is your maya. Prabhu, you come to me and I will surrender myself to you. That's what we say. Here we find a devotee of the Lord who has surrendered himself to the Lord. He says in Karpanya Dosho, in quite Shishyasteham Shadi Mam Twam Prapannam. Yes. If I get anything wrong, I'll do that, Swamiji. Right? So here he is saying that I am your disciple. He has surrendered unto the Lord. And that's a very important aspect of our own evolution. I'm not asking anybody here to raise their hands, but have you surrendered to a teacher? Have you surrendered to a sampradaya? And surrender is probably one of the most difficult things to do. Because it means to say that I don't know anything and you know better than me. I remember some issue there was at home. My mother called me Noah. Because she said, you like Noah the Ark. You know everything. But it's similar to our disposition. Because we find it very difficult to think that there may be something that I don't know. But the evolved beings of the world are very humbling, knowing that there are things that they do not know. And the Lord is saying that, see, Arjuna has been listening attentively to Krishna's words. And that's where, in this chapter, without Krishna even having to, Arjuna, without having to question, Krishna gives him the knowledge. Because he can see a transformation in Arjuna. He says, Hitakam yaya. I'm declaring this to you for your welfare. And really a spiritual person does everything only for the welfare of another. And I think over these last few days, I would have heard Swamiji speak so much about uprooting selfishness from your personality. And Shri Krishna here is showing that whatever he does as a supreme teacher, he does only for the welfare of his disciple. And that as well, whatever we do, we're a parent, and you're responsible for some lives. You may be a teacher in your school. You as well only do what is good for that person. They may not like it. You know what licks I get to go Hindi class? I could still remember that stick. But my mother was doing it out of hitam. What was beneficial for me? And one aspect of this as well, when you are using your intellect, looking at your mind, do things that are for your welfare, not what is pleasing for you in the moment. Pleasing things will come and pleasing things will go. So, I sit at the table and there's gulab jamun, rasgulla, and it's pleasing to eat 5. I got to tell you a story. I went to a yajna once, right? I was much smaller. Or you could imagine that? All right, yeah, I was much smaller. And they make about 200 rasgulla. So there were some boys around, probably about 15 of us. So we decided to check out the rasgulla and realize if we cut the rasgulla in half, there will still be enough for the bags. We thought that, so we shared it out and everything. So the person who had the yajna come afterwards and he said, what going on there? I said, what going on? He said, well, I want to give people half of the rasgulla. I said, yes, it wasn't beneficial for them to eat so much of rasgulla. What kind of gyan at that age? Ulta gyan. But sometimes we justify our own wrong notions or wrong ideas. And here we find that Shri Krishna is saying, whatever I'm telling Arjuna, whatever I'm telling you here, as my devotee, and early on he says, because you are also my Sakha, because you are my devotee and because you are my friend, I'm telling you something that is good for you. And that's where all the sastras of the world is probably your best friend. And that's why the Gita itself is referred to our mother as well. Because she only tells you that which is good for you. You know when you realize it's good for you? When you become, like in life, when your mother telling you okay nothing, don't listen. Whatever she said, pass through this one and go to the next one. When you have your own children, analyze your own life. That is the same exact thing you're going to tell your own children. So as we recognize the beauty of the Gita, as we start to internalize the knowledge of the Gita, we ourselves will start to share that as well. The next verse we go to, the Lord is saying how many people do not understand him for who he is. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Name vidu suradanaha pavam namahal shayah.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Ahamadirhi devana maharishinath sarvashah.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Yo mam ajan manadi shaveti maheshwaram.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Sammodah chamarteshu sarva papekamuchyati.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama.
Sharanam Mama. Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Bihari Lal ki jai. He says the na me vidu surganaha. He says the gods themselves do not understand me in my absolute nature. See, there are several different levels at which we can see this. But if you think about how one in Hinduism becomes a devata is an evolved jiva. So you're living a very good life, and you're living a very good life, and you're performing your punya karma, your meritorious deeds, and you've been doing it for several lifetimes. What happens is you then start to evolve at a rapid pace. And then having performed so much punya karma for a very long time, you then go to some loka. Some loka where you have some special privileges. And that's not a very difficult thing to understand. You work very well in a company for several years. And because of your dedication, because of your hard work, because of following the principles that prevail in that organization, you find yourself having so much more privileges than others. So, because you Deva also comes to the verbal root, which means to shine. Because you shine so much in your field of activity, you have been given a certain position. But even then, what Bhagavan is saying is, even though they are evolved in their own field, that doesn't give them the ability to know the source of what enlivens that field to function the way it is. And it's very interesting that you may be the best engineer in this country or even in the world, but being very good at engineering or being a very good scientist, does that give you the ability to know what causes the laws of science or the laws of mechanics to operate the way that it does? And he's saying that there's one interesting, and here Devas is used and also Maharishis are used as well. But even though one may be highly evolved, wherever you are, and in religion as well, you find that there are so many things that one may gain by being in religion. And there are so many people, power, you may gain power, you may gain position, you may gain people at your disposal. But even then, to know the Lord in His highest, in His most subtlest form, is not something that comes by those things. And here, the word Maharishis as well. And I must admit, when I was meditating on this, ruminating over this point, I was saying, so how could the Maharishis, those who are seers of great mantras, of eternal truths, how could they not know the Lord? Because sometimes there are rishis who would be, with one mantra, they will catch in the cosmos somewhere. But even knowing that mantra doesn't mean to say that they go beyond the mantra. And something happens with us as well. We reach one stage of comfort, and we don't ever think about, because it's comfortable there, we don't ever think about going further than that. We reach our comfort zone as if. And here he's saying that neither the greatest gods, and Adi Shankaracharya in his Bhashya says, from Brahmaji, who manifests the entire universe, to all the other gods, Indra, Agni, etc. They don't know God in his truest sense. And that's why it's very important for us to try to figure out our relationship with God. Jiva, Jagat and Jagadishwara. Jiva means individual soul, Jagat is the world, Jagadishwara is Lord of the entire universe. And how are these three things interconnected? And if we don't, well, back here again. And if the lords, you know what happens with the lords, right? When they are there enjoying, they forget. You know, I was reading some book on Guru Upasana, Guru Bhakti. And it says that those who are really in love with the Guru, in joy they remember the Guru, in sorrow they remember the Guru. The Guru never leaves their reality. They are always reveling in that. And for us as well, and the Devas don't have that ability. Because you think about Indra. Indra is given in the Puranas, and that fellow is always worried about losing his position. So one who is so constantly worried and agitated about losing something, how could he be having attained the highest? How could he be peaceful by nature? He says that I am the source of the gods. And in the philosophical aspect of Vedanta, it's very difficult for effect to know the cause. So if the Lord was there before, and the effect comes after, well, the effect is a result of that cause, it's difficult for the cause to know the effect in its true sense. Unless the effect is able to dissolve its individuality. Like, okay, so the pot is never able to know all the clay that there is. Or the drop of the ocean is never able to know the entire ocean until the drop itself dissolves its individuality and just merges into the ocean. So the knowing in Vedanta is not a knowing of objective science where I stand outside and I know something. So even when it comes to knowing God, it's not I know God as XYZ or as some external entity of myself, but I know God as my very self itself. And that's what's being indicated here. And how do we know, should we know the Lord? It is said that the Lord is a gem without birth. And for Shivaratri, I was meditating on the form of Lord Shiva. And you can never think about Lord Shiva having parents. There's nowhere in my own study of the scriptures, and I may be wrong, but there's nowhere in my study of the scriptures you figure out the Lord having any mother and father. How can that which is the cause of anything have any birth? And also, when we are analyzing the Lord not having any birth, we must realize as well that when we think about the self, which we are, when you take away that jiva, hood of the jiva, mean I'm small, I'm little, I'm weak, I'm nobody. When you take away that and you just identify yourself with that cosmic reality, you also have no birth. And in chapter 4 of the Gita, Shri Krishna says, Janma Karma Chamediviyam. My activities and my birth is divine. And understanding the Lord's birth is divine, and understanding not only that our seeming birth, that when we remove the fact that we have seeming birth, we also are divine. Because we also are never born. In the essence of our being, we are never born. And he says that, so because I have no birth, there's no time that I started. Bhagavan is saying that, not that, okay, so 2000 BC, 3000 BC, 5000 BC, not that I came into being at that time. So even when you think about the avatar, any particular avatar that we indicate, and we say that he was born on that day, at that time, in that place, that isn't really the fullest aspect of the Lord in all his glory. So even if I say I have studied this entire avatar in depth, and know everything about him, we still haven't known the Lord. Amazing it is. He says that, so I am unborn and I am beginningless. And also, I am Maheshwara. I am the Lord of the entire world. And for me, if one just internalizes this one statement, I feel that all fanaticism should go from one's personality. All divisiveness also should go. And Swami Vivekananda said that. He says when religion is understood from its highest perspective, well, room is there for any type of divisions and barriers. Maheshwara, he is Loka Maheshwara, he is the Lord of the entire world. You know, and it's interesting for us to understand as well, that if I say I am a devotee of God, and I surrender to God's will, and he is one that controls the laws of the universe, or knows the laws of the universe, and also knows karma and its effect, then I am supposed to have so much faith in whatever he does and how he does, and my gati as well. But in order for me to have faith in my gati, I also have to surrender to the Lord as well. When we think about the amount of things that an individual jiva doesn't have control over, you don't have control over where you were born, you don't have control of where you're going, you don't have control over the effects of karma from a previous life. But the Lord has control over those things. The Lord also has control of where he will take birth, his own actions, the effect of other actions that, or the seeming effect that other actions will have upon him as well. And so the Lord is saying that I know all these things. And there are those great souls as well, rare souls, Trikal Drishti, who having identified with the Lord, also knows these things as well. And he's saying that one who knows me like this is undeluded. He isn't deluded. And when we think about delusion, Shri Krishna in the beginning of the Gita says, the reason I speak the Gita is to remove your delusion, is to remove your sorrow. So whenever we feel sorrowful, know that we haven't understood the Lord in His greatest glory. Whenever it is we feel finite, I am only this much. Know that you haven't understood. We haven't understood the Lord in His highest state. Know that when we are unable to make decisions about kartavya karma, what should be done, what should not be done, every single minute situation, know that we haven't understood the Lord in His highest perspective. Because it says the one who understands knows what's the correct course of action in every circumstance. And not only he knows what's the correct course of action, he also performs the correct action in every circumstance. So, we will see the next verse where the Lord begins to identify some of the thoughts in which He is most present, where He enlivens those thoughts Himself. A sample of thoughts have been given. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Buddhya Jnanam Sammoha Kshama Satyam Dhamashamaha,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Sukham Dukkam Bhavo Bhavaha Bhayam Cha Bhayameva Cha,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Ahimsa Samata Tushtya Tapaha Dhanam Yasho Ayashaha,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Bhavanti Bhava Bhutanam Matta Eva Pratak Vidaha,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama,
Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, Sharanam Mama, Sharanam Mama. Bhavanti Bhava Bhutanam Mata Eva Pratak Vidha. Bhagavan says that, know that all these thoughts arise from me. So he's saying that everything in the universe arises from me, but especially when you see these thought patterns in your personality, know that their very sources is me. And first he starts with Buddhir. He says that the thought of thinking, ability to discriminate between what is right and wrong, the ability to analyze, the ability to evaluate, he says, know that this emotion has a source in me. So, whenever we think deeply on any particular topic, that in itself is invoking some aspect of the Lord. So, if we are intellectual and we understand this concept, it means that every time I ruminate over any particular thought, I think deeply, there I invoke the power of that thought pattern that comes from God. What happens there is, even though I may be the greatest of intellectuals, I then surrender to some high ideal. So even if I come and I speak fluently on all these 6 darshanas, The 6 ways in which a man has an ability to connect with God through some relationship with the universe. After when he comes out of that lecture, he'll say that my intellect and the way that my intellect functions is only because of the blessings of the Lord. Buddha Jnanam. So when that intellect is used to discriminate between what is real and what is unreal, that which is permanent and that which is impermanent, when it is able to go into, and Adi Shankaracharya beautifully says that the Buddhi is that which has the capacity to understand subtle things. So one is when it comes to the worldly interaction, where I use my Buddhi for anything worldly. The definition the rishis use for worldly is very interesting. It says that anything that doesn't lead us to recognition of God is worldly. And that's why in the previous verse it says that Sarva Pape Pramuchate, that I deliver you from everything that is sin. And I feel that Hinduism has one of the greatest definitions of sin. Sin is anything that takes you away from the reality. Sin is anything that doesn't allow you to rest in your infinitude. Think about how wide the concept of sin is. So if it is that I get up every morning and I am singing bhajans, but I'm not singing for the Lord, I'm saying, I wonder if them hearing me next door, how much rag and thing I know, and I go and I study this thing for 3 years. That is sin. If it is that I go in the satsang and I overeat, or I overeat before the satsang, or after the satsang, and when I go home I'm supposed to meditate on whatever was taught, and I'm going inward, like that. That is sin. You see, anything that, so I can be in a home where these people support me towards spirituality, and it isn't sin. But I can imagine I'm in the ashram and I get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Sun done rise, all prayers done. That is sin. At another level, one who, it's so interesting, this definition. It says that even the Devatas who enjoy this, so the Devatas could just clap so, and somebody could come with ice cream on the 2 sides. That is what Swarga is like in Hinduism. But in that, getting into ice cream, chocolate ice cream, 1 scoop, strawberry on top, with 2 cherry. You tell me when you're eating that strawberry and thing on top of it, right? If it is, you could remember the Lord. And non-remembrance of the Lord in that second is considered to be pap. Anything that moves you away from the subtler aspects of your own personality is pap. So, and that's where we have to move away from religion versus spirituality. Sometimes the child will go and put the flower in the left hand, and you want to be the child for that. And that probably the child is, at some point in time, the child should be corrected. But at that point in time, the child is tuning with the highest perspective in his own self. So how could that possibly be papa? And that's where really things should be viewed from knowledge. And it says that, so the Lord said, wherever you see this knowledge manifesting, wherever you see knowledge of the reality, where I know my identity with that reality, know that I am present there. The Lord is saying that himself. And then he says that, what he says? I lost the page. Okay, Shama. I tell you, the Lord says that I am patience. Shama is used in 2 perspectives. One is patience, but the other is forgiveness. More so forgiveness. I am that forgiveness. And I feel that really for evolution to take place, you shouldn't hold anybody in mind. Remember the flowers your neighbor picked last week? The oral flowers, and you was watching she and you wanted the flowers to do a puja? I tell you, this forgiveness is so important. Because what happens is there are agitations in our mind. When I don't forgive another, I harbor some type of hatred to the other. I have anxiety. I go, see, God go do for them, yeah? And we do it. And I'm not talking about external, I'm talking about our own selves at a lower perspective. Our own mind, when our intellect says, okay, forgive and forget, you say, who forgiven who? Crazy or what? I'll go see. How? And we see that previously in the Gita, it says that even if the vilest sinner would come to me, in 1 second I forgive him. If the Lord of the universe is willing to forgive, who are you? I met one Mahatma in India, and he was saying, you judge people, give it up. And I bend my head so, and I say, yeah, Guruji. Because we do. And I'm not saying that it's going to end tomorrow, but I'm saying the call of the Gita is saying end it now. In order to be, if it's a Devic spiritual quality, is end it now. And he says, as well as I am Satyam, I am that truth. Wherever you see truth being practiced, know that I am there. And the implication of that word truth is I cannot think my words, my thoughts, and my actions should be cohesive. In my own personality, I can think something else and do something differently. And Swami Vivekananda beautifully said in one of his writings, he says one who practices this truth for 12 years consecutively, anything he says becomes truth. Amazing. And one aspect of this truth is when we speak truth, it must be Priyam, Satyam, Priyam, Hitaya, Cha. It must be for the welfare of others as well. He says that I am also that. I am self-control. Wherever it is that you see somebody who is controlling their mind, Shama and Dhamma. Wherever you see somebody controlling their mind from going outwards, know that I am there. And one who controls, my mind wants to go outwards, but I'm able to control the mind from going outwards. That is called Dhamma. And Shama is where I've controlled my mind even from not going outwards. That is Shama. He says wherever you see these things practiced, he says I am also there wherever you see Sukham. Wherever you see joy in the world, know that I am the one enlivening that joy. And wherever you see sorrow as well, know that's only my expression as well. Imagine you're sorrowful, you're sad, and in that sadness you can remember that the source of it is God. And Kunti said, give me more sorrow, because in my sorrow I remember you. What complaint? So from one other perspective, the sorrow comes only from your karma. He says that, Bhayam, I am that fear. Wherever you see somebody fearful, like if you didn't do your homework and you see teacher ready to beat you and you're fearful, know that in that fear I am there as well. There's a room for fear as well in scriptures because you are supposed to fear doing the wrong thing. He says, and Abhayam, I am that fearlessness. Wherever you see fearlessness, and how that fearlessness comes is because I'm identified with God. I'm identified with reality. If it is that I am living a truthful life, then where is there room for fear? Fear whom and why? So you find plenty of these freedom fighters who are able to walk out into the world and say, let me die. What is there to fear? If you walk with God. And here he's saying that. He says, I am that which allows fearlessness and fear as well to be there. And I need to give the word meaning for these few words. Ahimsa, non-violence. I am that, not even think about injuring anybody in word, thought, and deed. Wherever you see that, you see me. Because of me, samatha. I am that evenness of mind. Whenever things are happening in the world outside, I don't have control over things that are happening, but whatever happens, know that I am the one that expresses as the vritti or the thought pattern of evenness of mind. He says, I am also santosha. I am that contentment. I am also tapas. Where you see somebody doing some self-denial, some austerity for the benefit of their own conserving of energy to put it towards a spiritual practice, I am that. He says Danam. Wherever you see one giving charity, one giving of their time, one giving of their money, one giving of their resources, know that I am the one that enlivens that vritti, that thought pattern. I am also that fame, where you see Hanumanji and everybody so famous for having done so many things, and I am also that Ayashaha, where you see Ravana being criticized for not doing what he's supposed to do, I am that as well. He says all these thought patterns, but even though I express myself as these thought patterns, and whenever you see these characteristic traits of these lifestyles being expressed, know that your purpose as a spiritual student is to know that these are expressions of these thoughts, but the source of the thought is Bhagavan. I go back to where the source is. I never get involved in the expression. Shri Krishna Bihari Lal Ki Jai. We now ask everyone to please stand as we join in Arati.